Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we have Kelsien the Plague, a Mardu experience counter deck with a Voltron sub-theme. This is one of our donation decks of the week, and it comes from Shirok, who says, "Hey Cursed, I've been scratching my head around what I can do to improve this deck. I've got some infect options for non-creature decks, and Othari, the Sun's Glory as an alt win con. Not sure it's enough. Any suggestions on that?" The other main issue, I think, is I'm finding ways to squeeze in a bit more evasion for my commander, since the main focus is Voltron with other cards backing him up, but he seems to lack evasion and protection, and I think a couple of recursion cards couldn't hurt. Thank you in advance for help on assisting this build. Absolutely. Thank you as always, Shirok, for sending the deck, and as a big Mardu fan and a fan of Kelsien myself, I really like this deck, and I definitely have some thoughts on it. So, without further ado, let's go look at the commander and get right into it. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. So who is Kelsien the Plague, and why are they our experience counter commander? Well, simply put, experience counters usually come on 2-color creatures. There is one exception now, which is the Eldrazi that came out with experience counters, coming out at MH3, so experience counters can exist in 5 colors. But Kelsien is the only other commander that is more than 2 colors, so we can put a lot of experience counters behind him. Kelsien the Plague is in Mardu, red, white, black, legendary human assassin, 2/2 vigilance haste. He's got 2 abilities. One is that he grows, +1/+1 for each experience counter you have, and the most important thing is that you can tap him, deal 1 damage to target creature you don't control. When that creature dies this turn, you get an experience counter. It breaks my heart that it's a creature you don't control, but otherwise, I'm a very, very big fan of this card. So, looking at Kelsien and the deck, I think the deck is very straightforwardly very good, and very much so in a direction that I like. I will say that the problem I can see in the deck is we're possibly maybe a little too all in. There's a lot of backup on Kelsien's ability, right? We want to be able to destroy creatures easily and repeatedly, therefore we have a lot of Death Touch that gets equipped onto him in order to facilitate that. We also have ways to add damage to the ping, as in Torwaki and I believe Torbrand here as well, maybe a bit more. And even further than that, we have a bunch of pingers as well that kind of also do the same thing as Kelsien for redundancy. And I think the situation is we've gone too far. We've gone just a little too far into this direction. So let's talk about, do we want to talk about alt win cons first? No, I think we should finish this thought first and talk about how many of these effects that we want. Now let's look at it. So let's do a little counting. When it comes to equipment, we've got Basilisk's Collar as 1, Gorgon Head is 2, Hunter's Blowgun is 3, Vorpal Sword 4, Gorgon's Flare 5. Let's see, Sting, that's 6, right? That's Death Touch? No, it looks like Death Touch because it's Sting, but it's not. So, where were we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're at 5. Then we have Quietus Spike, that's 6. Thornbite Staff is an infinite combo here, so very, very good. And then we come here at Archetype of Finality for 7. And a few other things like Massacre Girl helps, but I'm going to say that's all of the Death Touch that we have that I can see right now, with some You're Already Dead for flavor. So we've got 7 Death Touch enablers, and that's probably a few too many. I will say we have Stoneforge Mystic and Stonehewer Giant as getting any equipment card we have. So we already have some redundancy there. And the thing is, a lot of these equipments aren't very good. Gorgon's Head is a particularly bad card, and these cards do not stack well, right? Hunter's Blowgun at least gives +1/+1 and gives reach, but if you attach it with Gorgon's Head, well, it's as if the Gorgon's Head doesn't exist. I will say it gives you Death Touch on not your turn, but like, Homie, please do not compare those two that way. The rest of the cards, like, there's too much redundancy. Gorgon Flail, for example, once again, +1/+1 and Death Touch. That's too much. And on the other hand, when we look at things like Blood Cultist, then we have Goblin Sharpshooter, then we have Rakdos Ixpicker, then Volshock Sorcerer. And I think that's it. That's another 4, which once again feels like too many. When we have this ability in our command zone, I don't really think we want this many additional copies. Now, like, let's think about a combo deck I have, Eiley. In Eiley, I have at least 2 to 3, maybe 4, 3 redundant pieces of what Eiley does in addition to having Eiley. Then I have a bunch of tutors. The difference is, and why I'm okay with that, is that combo immediately finishes the game. Whereas the combo of Death Touch, Creature, and Pinger, well, it's just a really fancy, what's that assassin? That black assassin that taps and destroys creatures. Like, it's just destroy a creature per turn. That's silly. Like, it sounds silly, but that's not good, right? That's just okay. The only reason we're okay with it is that Kelsien does a lot more and gets you experience counters. So even more, I don't want these extra superfluous creatures because they just don't do the same thing, right? Like, they don't give us experience counters. I'd much rather proliferators or something else that allows me to untap my creature just to get more triggers out of it over these creatures. So with that in mind, those are, I would say, the majority of our cuts. After that, I think I would cut some higher, like this top end. Ruinous Ultimatum just continues to be a card that I just think is far too much mana, especially in a deck like this. I do appreciate that you can use this and then swing for the fences with your commander, but I think you have generally better options, and I would much rather something like Toxic Deluge to take advantage of how big our commander gets and just wipe out our opponent's creatures. The Ultimatum is not terrible. I wouldn't hate you if you wouldn't take it out, but it always sticks out as a card to me as being just a little too much. Likewise, Torwalkie the Younger, just an Archetype of Finality, honestly, just both seem a little too much mana for what they do. Torwalkie just doesn't work with the number of instants and, it's not even instants and sorcery. Yeah, it's right. It's instants and sorceries that we have are just low. Some of them are reactive. Some of them just aren't really there to be used whenever we want, so we want to use them at the right time. I just don't see us getting anything reasonable outside of just this first line of text that says, well, our commander does 1 additional damage. And it's just 1 additional damage, right? It's not really what we want here. I think instead the Death Touch plan, the You Are Already Dead plan, is much, much better, and I think I prefer those as opposed to kind of boosting the damage on Kelsien. Otherwise, most of the deck I do really, really like. I did miss some Death Touch triggers. I'm sorry. We have Death Touch from Rune of Mortality, Retreat to Harga, and Gift of Doom. Gift of Doom is really cute. I don't know how many sack outlets we have to use this as a morph, but it is something that's interesting that I do like both Death Touch and Indestructible, so I do think it's fine. Righteous War feels cute. Retreat to Hagra is very cute. Rune of Mortality is at least a cycler. Yeah, those are the main things I want to pick on. I've been noticing my videos go a bit longer than I like, so I'm kind of going quickly through this while hitting all the key points. The rest of the deck I think is rather good. As for the sideboard cards, Shirak had mentioned that these are cards they were interested in putting in. Shadow Spear is one I'm already going to suggest. Fantastic card for evasion. Crafted Exoskeleton feels a little, once again, win more. The idea of these cards of giving Infect to our pingers is that we can start pinging down creatures and subtract as if they had Wither, or we can start putting poison counters on our opponents, but the poison counters don't work well with our main game plan of smashing face, and, you know, Wither hits, it's just better done with Massacre Girl Known Killer over here. Chandra's Ignition is a fantastic card. In fact, I would say this is a much better card than Ruinous Ultimatum. And Sun Titan's cute, but not really where we want to do what we want to do here. I guess we could Faithless Looting and then Sun Titan to get some, like, cheat out some things, but not really what we want. Yeah, that's generally my thoughts. Let's go into additions Actually, no. Before we go into additions, this is what I want to talk about. I wanted to talk about alternative win cons. So, our deck builders said that they were thinking of Infect or Othari Sun's Glory as alternative win cons. And I don't want to beat around the bush. I think Othari Sun's Glory should be the main win con. And I know that sounds silly, especially in a Voltron deck, but I think if you play one or two tutors and you still play the deck as a Kelsien deck with the main plan of, just getting experience counters, and that at one point you drop Athari, attack, make another experience counter, get like 7 tutus, now you're cooking with gas. That to me is the win condition. Then getting a few additional attacks, reanimating Athari, like you're gonna have a very, very good time. I think this card is very, very strong and works as a very, very good secret commander within this deck. That being said, I think the plan of just going Kelsien to the walls and just smashing face is more than good enough by far. But I think when push comes to shove, Kelsien, think about it like this, Kelsien is a 7/7, so that's 5 experience counters. And then you play Athari. Athari comes out, she attacks, you get 6 counters, right? So Kelsien's an 8/8, Athari is I believe 5. No, they're a 3/3. Athari comes out as a 3/3 and makes 6 tutus for a total of 15 power on the board. Now, Kelsien does commander damage, Athari doesn't, but Athari does basically double the damage, right? And maybe even just straightforwardly double the damage, right? For every 1 experience counter, you have +1/+1 versus 2 tutus, and 1 tutu, and each tutu stays on the battlefield after each attack. That's just insanely powerful. So absolutely keep the Kelsien plan, but have Athari in your back pocket as your main win condition is what I would say. So let's look at things in that direction. So these are kind of all over the place, but I wanted to answer some of the other questions that were asked. Phyrexian Reclamation, I think, is the only recursion you really need. I don't think you need anything fancier than this. I don't even think you really need this to begin with. It is cute and nice. I think you could also be fine with even Animate Dead, because I just don't think you have very many, there we go. You have very many creatures that I think you desperately need back. Don't get me wrong, Minthara is really cool, having Daxos and a mana sink is very cool, Mari's very cool, Massacre Curl, Gisa, they're all very strong creatures, but to be blunt, they're just okay. Stoneforge Mystic is probably one of the stronger cards you have to reanimate, and even then, I don't know how often you're going to be spending the mana to reanimate. I think you're generally just happier drawing cards and playing more, just moving forward. If Kelsien dies enough times, that's rough, but what are you gonna do? And the only creature I'll desperately want to get back onto the battlefield is Athari, right? And Athari comes with her own reanimation built into her. And even more than that, after then if that runs out, she's the one I don't know why I'm gendering her female, it just feels right. They're the one that's gonna come back, reanimate, and attack, right? I think that's the better idea, because when you attack, you get the rebels, so if they die again, you can just bring back the rebels. This is the only card I think I really want to excessively reanimate. So I don't really think Recursion is needed, but if you're going to either Animate Dead or Phyrexian, I will say I think Phyrexian Reclamation is much better because it's repeatable, and you're not going to use it that often, so that life cost doesn't really matter. Speaking of equipment, I wanted to get a few more tutors. It's going to be Fighter's Class and Steel Shaper Gift. And I want these just to replace 2 of the worst Death Touch tutors, and you could still take out a few extra, because you just, after those first maybe 1, maybe 2, in case of someone's going to remove the first one, tutors for Death Touch enablers, you really don't want more Death Touch enablers. So I'd rather just grab the next better spell. Fighter's Class is just a phenomenal tutor for equipment and does a really, really good job. The other abilities are really great mana sinks, and they're all very, very strong. Forcing the block with your commander can be very good at removing creatures, or you can use that with a number of other creatures to get like if they have one blocker, you can force the block onto another creature and get your commander in. Overall, just very, very strong. Actually, this is whenever a creature. So it's every creature you get to choose. I've actually never put this to level 3. I've used this card a lot, but that's funny. I've never really put it to level 3. I didn't realize it was every creature you attack. But generally, you play this, you put it to level 2, and you're good. But level 3 is great too. Steel Shaper's Gift. Obviously, this is the best version of this, as 1-mana tutors are very, very strong, and it goes straight to your hand as opposed to top of your deck. As mentioned before, Shadow Spear, I think, is the best equipment you could put in for evasion. It is an incredibly powerful card. I know this from playing Modern Hammer, and it just does so much. Giving Trample, this activated ability actually does a lot in Commander, so that's nice too, but getting Kelsien both Lifelink and Trample, you're going to have a good time. The alternative I thought of, or additional for evasion, is Hexgold Halberd. Halberd? This big axe. It comes with 4 Mirrodin, which I really like as it comes in with a creature. That Rebel's very important to us for Athari, should we get board cleared with her or them on the board. But beyond that, giving First Strike and Trample is a fantastic combination with Death Touch, which is something your deck can put together. For those who don't know, when you have First Strike and Trample and Death Touch, or even, yeah, it's all 3, right? Yeah. So when you have Death Touch and Trample, the way Trample works is you put lethal onto each creature that blocks it, and with Death Touch, when you add to it, you only need to put 1 point of damage to them. So someone could, you could attack with a 5/5, and someone could attack block with 3 creatures, and you'd only need to put 1 damage onto each of them in order to destroy them, and with Trample, the other 2 would go over. Now, you would probably lose your creature, and this is when First Strike gets added to this. So you put 1 point of damage on each blocker, you destroy them before they deal damage to you, and then the rest of the damage will trample through. And since Kelsien gets so big, that's a lot of damage. So this is a very, very strong combination of abilities that you can slam onto your commander. So I really do like this card. After this, talking about Athari a bit more, I wanted to talk about extra combat steps, both Aggravated Assault and Breath of Fury. Something that's important with both of these is that they work both with Athari and they work really well with Kelsien, because they both, one, extra combat abilities are just powerful because they enable you to hit more, but both of these enable more experience counters. Kelsien gets untapped per additional combat phase, therefore you will get another chance to destroy a creature and get an experience counter. Athari, who benefits far more, I would say, not only will get another experience counter on attack, but in addition will also generate another slew of rebels to attack as well. So both of these are very, very clean finishers. Now, Breath of Fury can be an infinite combo with Athari. It is a little high costed in real world money for that, and if you wanted to replace this with any other like 5 mana, just straight up take another combat spell, you'd probably be fine to do so. However, Aggravated Assault works really well as both a mana sink and a pretty big threat against your opponents. If you can generate enough mana, you can get more than 1 additional combat. If you can do 3 combats a turn with 10 additional mana, like, you've won the game. That's it. There's no way people can stop you. So I find both of these cards to be very, very strong. Looking at a few cards that I think are a little more cute but absolutely worth considering, Kedis Emberclaw Familiar does something really interesting with our commander, as it gives our commander a form of myriad almost, that when he'll hit one opponent, that damage will be reflected to all of our others. This is huge chunks of damage that I think is much more worthwhile than just another experience counter or another, pinger to get more blockers out of the way with Death Touch. I think when you're playing against opponents that do not have creatures, that's the concern here, right? Kedis is here that you attack that player, and then that damage gets reflected to the players with blockers, and that's fantastic. In fact, if you just compare it to saying like, well, I have like an opponent that has no creatures, and therefore I'm like 2 less experience counters than I usually would be, Well, Kentice makes up for that by basically doubling, tripling the damage of your commander, right? Very, very strong. After this, we'll come back to the other experience counters. I really wanted to say Kelsien, Disciple of Iorus, is notably absent in this deck. This, I understand why. He is by far the weakest, or they are by far, Giants, too big, don't know gender. They are by far one of the hardest experience counter decks to work, right? And that's probably not even true anymore if you're gonna start evoking Fury. There's so many ways to cheat 5 mana, still cast, but cheat on the casting of 5 mana creatures. There's probably a lot of ways to make Kelsien work, but not reasonably. And so most people won't put this one into Mardu experience, but I disagree. If part of the idea is that Kelsien does a lot of the grunt work of getting, 3 or 4 experience points by themselves, and then we can use the other experience point creatures at a nice base level, Kelsien really benefits from that base level. Getting +1/+1 and then having double strike on top of that is enormous. Not only does this work as a backup for Athari, if you give them trample, you're going to smash face incredibly hard, but in addition, additional combat steps work with this incredibly well, even with vigilance. So it's such a strong card. This should definitely be in this deck. Slam this creature down and forget about it. Just attack any opponent with it and you're going to have a very, very good time. I think this card is definitely not valued as much as it should be. I think they're very, very strong. Going back to experience counters, something I want to do is to give you the means to gain more experience counters regularly. And in order to deal with opponents that do not play in creatures, I think Rite of the Raging Storm is the perfect storm, the perfect card to mix it all together and solve all of the problems. Rite of the Raging Storm is already a card I very much enjoy in aggressive decks that have red and have a lot of different means of attacking, because it's just good pressure and damage towards your opponents, right? Rite of the Raging Storm not only represents a 5/1 on your turn on each upkeep, it's 3 other 5/1s that your opponents have to attack each other with, and that's great already. Then let's add in the fact that this is really good against opponents who do not have blockers, right? Or do not play a lot of creatures. They become a very easy target for your opponents to slam into each other, and absolutely they're going to take advantage of that and attack each other, attack the player with no blockers, or the player with without creatures will now start attacking, attracting the ire of other players. So that's another thing that I think is very great. But finally, if you haven't had enough of me telling you how good this card is, they're 5/1s. On end step, when this trigger goes on the stack, you just destroy them with Kelsien and you get a free experience counter. Now, it's not necessarily free. If you don't have untap abilities, it's just the same as getting one experience counter per round. But I will say, if you have Drumbellower, if you have any of those other untap abilities that you have in your deck, this is an additional experience counter per turn cycle, or per turn, so 4 per turn cycle if you're destroying one of your opponent's creatures on your turn as well. Otherwise, this card is guaranteed 3 per turn cycle, which is a lot of experience. This leads up that if you cycle around, slam Athari the next turn, you are just annihilating your opponents. So Rite of the Raging Storm really, really catches my eye. Very, very good card. I think it's just slept on so much. So powerful. Oh, I can't play Lightning Bolt. I can't go through this without suggesting play Lightning Bolt. Please play Lightning Bolt. So those are my suggestions. I really, really like this deck, and I've been actually kind of brewing it on the side. So I'm really glad to have it come my way, and I'm looking at it and being, yeah, this is very close to what I would build. Like I said, we've maybe gone too far into the pinging and death touch. We can just pull back a little bit and have a good time. And as for alternative win conditions, you have them right here. What a fantastic Phoenix to be able to play in this deck. All right, I hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you so much, Shirok, for supporting the channel and setting the deck. and good luck and happy deck building. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you and good luck in brewing and building.